You know, it's hard for me to realize it's been well over 4 decades since I had the good fortune to be directed by Ida Lupino in 2 of her films. Outrage, starring Mala Powers, and Hard, Fast, and Beautiful, starring Claire Trevor and Sally Forrest. It was undoubtedly the biggest break I'd ever had as a young actor. You know, it's often said that luck plays a big part in shaping our careers, and being in the right place at the right time is certainly equally important. And that was true in my case, because I just happened to be home one rainy afternoon when the phone rang, and on the other end of the line was Virginia Reed, a beautiful redhead I was dating at the time. And Virginia worked for a Hollywood advertising agency. She said, "I just talked to Martha Wilkerson, who's writing Ida Lupino's next picture. And Martha remembers you from a radio show you did with Brian Donlevy, and she thinks you'd be good for the second lead in Ida's production of Outrage. Now, if you can call her right now, she'll set up an audition with Ida." So, well, I was so excited I could hardly dial the phone. Anyhow, Lady Luck was on my side. And when Martha came on, she said, "Look, if you can get over here right away, they're reading actors for the part right now." So, needless to say, I drove as fast as I could, even in the rain. And I got there just in time. I was one of the last actors to audition. I rehearsed briefly with the dialogue director, who then ushered me into Miss Lupino's office. I immediately noticed that Ida was very theatrical, quite dramatic in the way she did things, the way she presented herself, the way she introduced herself to me. Everything was terribly important, darling. And this is a very important part, you know, very much in the style of Betty Davis or Tallulah Bankhead. And I mentioned to Ida that I'd recently been on Broadway in the plays The Thing that starred Louis Calhern and Faye Emerson, and that seemed to impress her. And then the time came for me to read, and I read opposite Don Weiss, the dialogue director, who was reading Mala Powers' part. Well, when we finished, Ida said, "Oh, that was wonderful, darling. That was marvelous. You're it." I almost fell on the floor when Ida said, "You're it." I knew that this was one of the luckiest days of my life. Like many others who worked with Ida, I found it a memorable experience. She kept in mind the fact that every tick of the clock meant money spent on production. And yet, she still managed to give young actors all the space and freedom that we needed to develop our characters. Ida's husband, Collier Young, who co-produced these pictures, also gave the actors a feeling of importance, a sense that our talents were essential to that picture's success. As a result, we were always able to give it our best. We would go the extra mile to give it all we had. As an actor, I felt my confidence soar. And like Sally Forrest, Hugh O'Brien, and other actors, I found that working with Ida was a great privilege that represented a big step in all of our careers. Ida was a person interested in stories with human values and other deep, intimate themes. Her films all bear a very personal mark. She was careful to pick subjects that were exploitable, stories that would sell, and that would attract an audience. But the interest she had in these subjects was very sincere, and she worked wonders with her modest budgets. In late 1952, she created a film about fate, death, and psychotic evil in the shape of an outstretched thumb. She called this production The Hitch-Hiker. Until the day she left us, it was her personal favorite. In other ways, however, it was the greatest disappointment of her entire directorial career. The Hitch-Hiker was released with little fanfare through RKO Studios, which at that time was a pale shadow of the studio it had been in its glory days of the 1930s and 40s. To make matters worse, the release prints were very badly made, printed on cheap stock to save a few pennies on each foot of film. Visually, they lacked all the subtle tones and mood which Ida and veteran cinematographer Nicholas Musaraka had worked so hard to achieve. Desert scenes shot in daylight were supposed to have been overexposed, giving the audience a feeling of oppression and unbearable heat. Night scenes were to be a velvet black, with pools of light and shadow, trapping the characters in their fate. But instead, everything was printed a dull gray, and the prints were hastily released. The Hitch-Hiker played the bottom half of double bills. Only a few sharp eyes took notice. One critic described Ida as a pathological drill sergeant, driving her actors to their death. Another called the film a terrifying nightmare not for the weak of heart. With that, the film vanished in all but the heart of the director who loved it. I am happy to say that I think their efforts will astound you. Gone are the dull grays, the scratches, and the blemishes. The Hitch-Hiker can once again be seen the way Ida and her collaborators intended. But more importantly, it will remain that way so that all of us, today and in the future, can appreciate the artistry of this unique director and her special company. The world of cinema has no future if the past is forgotten. It is my distinct honor to present Edmund O'Brien, William Tallman, and Frank Lovejoy in Ida Lupino's film noir masterpiece simply called The Hitch-Hiker.